Hello everyone and welcome back to WD18, the Watford fan channel, and welcome back to another podcast. Today we're joined by the lovely Robin Sargent. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good.
Back from the interviews. Sam, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very happy after the other day's results, and particularly with how the teams around us did, except for Brighton, of course. But I'm very happy that West Ham and Bournemouth didn't get to pick up 3 points.
I think that's where we'll start it today. Of course, that Leicester game on Saturday, a 1-1 draw at Vicarage Road. Ben Chilwell took the lead for the Foxes in the 89th minute. And then, of course, the main man, Craig Dawson, with an overhead kick in the dying minutes of added time. What a finish it was, but it gave Watford a point against Nigel Pearson's old side. And we'll kick it off there, Robin.
First of all, it's great to see football back. I mean, in what's been some really difficult last few months, I'd say, for everyone. I think having football back is just a norm that we can all appreciate having back in our lives, even if it's not 100% the way we are used to seeing it. Salute to all the players and that for coming back and doing their jobs, because I feel like it's given us a much needed boost. And the game itself, I thought we started quite slowly, and obviously it took us about 20-25 minutes to really get into the game. But once we got in there, it looked more like a 9th versus 10th sort of game instead of 3rd versus 17th. If we look at the start of the game, that first half, I thought Cabaselli kind of had a really shaky start, and we were letting Leicester have all the big chances. But then I think Craig Dawson and Will Hughes were our two standout players for this game, and Dawson dropping 5 yards back to counter Vardy's pace was really intelligent from him, and it was great to see Will Hughes really getting stuck in the midfield in that first half, and we had a few good chances.
Would you agree with that, Sam, in terms of the standout players? Robin touched on it there, of Dawson and Will Hughes. I thought Will Hughes was fantastic in the middle.
I'd say those two were the absolute standouts, but massive shout out to Ben Foster for that double save as well. Obviously he had no chance with that Chilwell goal, but in general, I thought Foster did very well, with the exception of his distribution, which has been a problem of his. I also thought Troy did all right, actually. I think he won pretty much every aerial battle that he came up against with Soyuncu and Johnny Evans, and he just needs people around him to actually get onto the end of those balls, and I just thought he did all right.
First 25 minutes or so, I thought Watford were quite sloppy, actually. We didn't start pretty well, and obviously that's understandable with the layoff we've had, but it seemed like that first drinks break really kind of kick-started Watford's performance. That chance in the first half from Abdoulaye Doucouré, which he probably could have done a little bit better with. And then we kind of kicked on into the second half. Was that a frustration, Robin, in terms of the chances that we didn't take? That Doucouré chance I touched on, Ismaila Sarr in the second half?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking when we had those chances, I thought this is going to come back to haunt us. With a team like Leicester, especially when they got Vardy up front, Vardy is a very, very clinical striker, and if he gets a clear-cut chance, 9 out of 10 times he puts it away. I just feel like this season, overall, no matter who's been the manager, I think we've been a bit wasteful with our chances. And I think before going into the break, I remember seeing a lot of stats saying we were up there for chances created, but we were also near the top for chances missed and wasted chances. So I feel like you can't work on that in training because it's a match environment. You have to just be clinical in the match. And I think sometimes the decision making, whether it's right or wrong, that just needs to be something we have more confidence in and carry forward. But it was great to see us getting in those scoring positions. I just had a feeling, obviously, and it did happen with the Leicester goal, that it was going to come back to bite us. And thankfully, we managed to rescue a point at the end. But yeah, it was very clear in those first 20 minutes we were struggling. I'm glad Nigel Pearson did almost give them some sort of hairdryer treatment at the drinks break.
You look at Mariappa's positioning for that Leicester goal, and a brilliant finish from Ben Chilwell. We can't take that away from him. Number one, I thought it was odd the changes Nigel Pearson made. There was suggestions that Feminier might have picked up a knock, but I didn't really feel like he was needed taken off anyway. Mariappa, of course, came on, and you got the impression he had the mindset of a centre-half, actually, because we know Mariappa can fill it at right back, and he does do a job there. He kind of pushed over into the position of a right centre-half, which left the position for Ben Chilwell to obviously get that strike away. Did you feel that Mariappa was at fault for the goal, and what did you make of Nigel Pearson's substitutions in that second half?
So I wouldn't necessarily say Mariappa was at fault, because it was an absolutely brilliant goal by Ben Chilwell, but he was caught too narrow, and that's because his natural position is a centre-back. We know that he's not that great at right-back. I don't question Pearson for bringing off Kiko, because this is another area that I want to touch on. He's our only right-back now, and if he gets injured, because we don't have Yanmat for the rest of the season, we are in massive trouble, assuming that either Mariappa or Dawson will have to play at right-back. And I think that's perhaps his thinking behind taking off Kiko, because towards the end of the game, might have been getting a bit of cramp, and he doesn't want to risk him. So I don't necessarily question him for that. But what I do question is perhaps taking taking off the likes of Capu, perhaps Messina to an extent, also Kiko, kind of changing, three of the most crucial positions in the team for the way that we want to play. And that risk, could have easily come back to haunt us. And, we got lucky in a way that DAWSON was able to pull out an absolute screamer at the end.
Just to expand on that, Sam, do you think that's an area we need to be targeting in the transfer window? Because I spoke with Adam Leventhal last week, and he was kind of saying the decision won't be made on transfers until our Premier League status is confirmed. Obviously, that is the priority at the moment. But you mentioned the right-back situation. We've got Kiko, we've got Dauri Amat, who's a really nasty injury from what we're hearing in terms of he had a routine surgery that went wrong. I think it was a bacteria that grew in his knee, and he's had to get that cleaned in Holland. He will be out for the rest of the season, and when he does come back, it will be around 8 months since that first injury was initially sustained. Is a right back a priority for Watford in the upcoming transfer window?
Yeah, definitely. I've been saying it for years now that as good as Kiko and Yamat are, they're both incredibly liable to injuries, typical Watford way. Perhaps maybe someone younger we need to bring in that position who's maybe a bit fitter. I just wonder how much longer we can keep up with players such as Yamat, who on his wages, with how many games that he brings a year, how much longer we can retain having a player like that within the squad. And I just think that right back is one of the most crucial positions we need to upgrade on, along with the centre back and the striker.
Especially when Delafay's back fit, we're definitely better in the midfield and attack than in defence. We've got youth prospects up front. If you look at even whether Cucho Hernandez comes to the club, you've already got Joao Pedro, Peñaranda, players like that who I think maybe could be given a chance. You look at attacking midfielders like Keener, and then you've got obviously Sarr on the wing doing so well. I think defence has always been our problem. Even with when we were getting 0-0 draws and clean sheets this season and not scoring, I didn't feel confident in our defence. And I think as good as Foster is, with the defence he's had in front of him this season, you can see why we've been struggling at the back. And I definitely think over the summer, if Gino and the board of directors and Scott Duxbury don't see a problem with the defence, they're kidding themselves as to our Premier League status.
Craig Dawson stepped in fantastically well, I thought, on Saturday against Leicester. Could you see him starting against Burnley?
I was surprised that he dropped Cathcart. Actually, I know it's been a long time since we played, so it's kind of can't really look at the previous team that he put out, but Cathcart's kind of been that ever-present figure in the squad since 2014 when he came back after Blackpool. So I was surprised that he took him out, particularly because while Dawson necessarily hasn't been bad, he's not been as good as we thought, maybe a bit slow, lethargic. But, he was brilliant. He marshalled Vardy really well, as Robin already said. I thought Damari Gray caused a bit of problems when he came on for the defence, but on the whole, I thought that they all did really well. I wouldn't change it for Burnley because, why would you change something that's not broken? Chilwell scored an absolute screamer. Mariappa came on. But in terms of the boys that started, I wouldn't change it.
One player that I'm very passionate about not starting, not because of his ability, but because of his mindset, is Roberto Pereira. Now, he's made it pretty clear in an interview with an Argentinian publication that he wants to leave Watford at the end of the season. He's confirmed that he will be leaving Watford at the end of the season. Udinese have been linked. He's been keen to move back to Italy. Of course, he played for Udinese, he played for Juventus. Robin, what is your thoughts on that? Do you think Roberto Pereira should be still starting on the left-hand side? Because we've got the likes of Joao Pedro, Peñaranda, Ignacio Processo, Danny Welbeck, who featured on Saturday against Leicester. What's your thoughts on the Roberto Pereira situation?
He definitely doesn't start against Burnley for me. I'm happy to have him on the bench, and I think I can get why Pearson started him at the weekend, because maybe he wanted to say, look, you've got this many games left for Watford. I want you to give it your all. I want you to go out there and advertise yourselves to whatever club you want to go and play for. He looked like a passenger. That's all I could say, really. He didn't have much time on the ball. He didn't get in the box much. And I think I wouldn't maybe chuck Joao Pedro on stuff like that, but I think those sorts of players deserve more of a chance than Pereira. A, because they're unknowns to the other clubs we're playing against, and B, because they will want it more than Pereira. Pereira seemed a bit comfortable, a bit vacant. So I would definitely keep him on the bench because I feel like it might motivate him when he comes on to actually do something. But I think he was quiet. He was very quiet in that first half, and I'd definitely like to see maybe a more physical player in Welbeck start, or maybe change to a 4-4-2 and put Andre Gray in for Burnley.
I think it's a massive risk if we change the formation now, Robin. On the whole, under Pearson, it has been working really well, particularly with, Hughes being much deeper. And if we change to a 4-4-2, then, you'd have to drop one of Decore, Capu, or or Hughes, who none of them really deserve to be dropped. You could make an argument for Decore, but he's massive for us. I think it's just a massive risk putting João Pedro in there to start with. I was very surprised actually that Welbeck didn't come in, considering all the stories about Pereira leaving. And you know, while like, I don't know, the club admin and, you know, the website don't necessarily know what Pearson's starting team is going to be, there was very positive reviews coming out about Welbeck and a lot of Welbeck propaganda, and I thought that was an indication that he was going to start, so I was surprised, but I do think he'll come in against Burnley.
Sam, just your thoughts on the Pereira situation. You've been pretty vocal about it, similar to me. Could you maybe elaborate on why you think that?
Look, I personally, I don't think his head's been at Watford for some time. This season, I think we've all had a pretty good indication that he's going to move on at some point. It's such a shame though, because in my lifetime, I don't think I can think of a more talented player with the pedigree that he's got. He's played for Argentina, he's played in the Champions League final, he's played alongside some brilliant players for both club and country. If a player's thinking, you know, in a 50-50 where he could get injured, do I do this, do I not? Is it going to damage my chances of getting to a better club? Do I care if Watford go down? I don't want those dilemmas. I want players giving it their all. And if someone isn't going to be doing that, then I don't want to see them in a Watford shirt. And if the stories are true about Pereira, then, you know, I don't want him near the squad, to be honest, let alone on the bench.
I think it was interesting from Pearson to start him. And as you said, Sam, considering the reviews Welbeck was receiving after that Brentford game, from what I was hearing from people at the game, he was the bright spark. He looked fit. He looked like he was firing on all cylinders down that left-hand side. And I have to feel sorry for Danny Welbeck, because not only throughout his career, but his time at Watford have been plagued with injuries. I mean, that Tottenham game at White Hart Lane is the perfect example, getting injured within 4 minutes. Can you maybe, Robin, think why Pereira did start on the left? Do you think it was an odd decision from Pearson?
I think Pearson was maybe trying to show Pereira maybe this is your one chance. And I think maybe he's also maybe protective of Danny Welbeck. Maybe the best thing to do wasn't to start him straight away, even though he had played it a lot against Brentford. He wants to kind of ease him back into that Premier League life and maybe save him near the end of the season, because we've got some big games coming up against the likes of Newcastle, Norwich, West Ham. I feel like he could be game changers. This is a guy that has played in the Champions League, been capped for England multiple times, gone to Euros and World Cups. He's a top striker, no doubt about it, when he's on form. I think a very good man-manager, Pearson. You could see that from the way he's taken over this team. And I think players like Cleverley, Chalobah and Welbeck are all going to really benefit under Pearson over the next 8 or 7 games.
So up next for Watford is a trip to Turf Moor. We face Burnley and, of course, former Watford manager Sean Dyche. A big game for Watford. I think when you look at the next 2 games, we've got Burnley and Southampton, and they're not easy games, but games that you want to be targeting 3 points. And particularly after maybe the comeback against Leicester, there's certainly belief and character in the Watford squad that we can go to Turf Moor and get a result, added to the fact that Burnley have just come off the back of a 5-0 defeat to Manchester City. Looking ahead to that Burnley game, Sam, what would you take from the Leicester game that Watford need to improve on going into the game at Turf Moor?
I wouldn't say it's a case of necessarily something to improve on, because I thought we set up well, and I thought it was just a matter of, you know, minutes, and we need to be a bit sharper. Which obviously will come with more minutes. I don't expect it to be, you know, fully perfect against Burnley either. But, you know, we keep on saying that every single week. We have to take our chances. We normally have a period in games, I think. I've noticed a similar pattern, normally between 15 and 35 minutes, where we normally have control of the game and we create chances. Capoue, Decore have a lot of the ball. But we never seem to exploit those moments.
Just looking back to that game in November, Robin, at Vicarage Road, it finished 3-0 Burnley, Wood, Barnes and Tarkowski on the score sheet for the Clarets. Do you think that will have any bearing on this week's game at Turf Moor?
I think the players, despite it being under a different manager, will want to get some sort of revenge and want to prove that they're not a side that can be done the double over by Burnley, when, if you look on paper, we are probably technically a better team than them, especially if they're lacking in strike power, with Wood and Barnes supposedly out with injuries going into this game. It's a big game for us to target, and we've gone to Turf Moor and got a good result before. You look at last season under Javi.
Change Sam from the Leicester game. He did make quite a few subs in the second half. Do you think any of those substitutions could actually start against Burnley?
Yeah, 100%. First of all, before I actually mention this, I think that this 5 subs rule is ridiculous. When we come up against Man City, Chelsea and Arsenal, they're going to have the likes of particularly Man City. Yesterday they built on De Bruyne and Leroy Sané. When we're in a relegation battle, that's frankly not fair. I think Welbeck will come in over Pereira. I would not be surprised to see Tom Cleverley come in, perhaps over Decore or Hughes. If not against Burnley, I do think that there will be starts for the likes of Cleverley, Holebas and Chalobah at some point, and even Andre Gray.
I think it's all about momentum. You got to look. We've had a decent start with a draw against what were third in the table. We've got this run of games coming where we not easily. No game is easy, but if you look on paper, we can get points from this team, points from this team, points from this team. Like, apart from like Man City and some of the bigger teams, I'm looking at this run and thinking there's points to be had at every game. Every game is winnable, and it's all about getting this momentum now. I know Southampton won their last game. So it'd be interesting to see how they get on in their next game before they play us. But you look at teams like Bournemouth and West Ham, they've started really poorly, and it's going to be hard for them to get on a run. So I think we've got to use this Burnley game to put ourselves on a bit of a winning run, on a bit of a undefeated run, if anything, so that maybe we have to be safe before we get to those final two games against Man City and Arsenal. We have to. They're saying that around 38, 39 points should be good enough, and that's 9 points away from where we are now, which is gettable. We just have to start this streak. We have to start it properly against Burnley.
An interesting point to add is about the away game travel. Now, if you look at the teams around us, they've got to go on to big away days to the likes of Newcastle up north. This is the only game Watford actually have outside of London in the last 8 games. Burnley, Chelsea, West Ham and Arsenal.
Particularly in the current circumstances with, I'm not really sure how it's working with the players travelling. I'm hearing they're having to fly to games much more, just because of the ventilation. It's much better. But, I think it's looked over a lot that travel has a massive bearing on players, on the way that players play.
So to wrap up today's podcast, we're going to be chatting about the proposals which were released by the Watford Observer in an exclusive feature that Watford Football Club have begun official talks with council officers about a potential move from Vicarage Road to Bushey Hall Golf Club. As you may have seen, Adam Leventhal from The Athletic revealed that a design for a new stadium had been proposed and Bushey Hall Golf Club was mentioned at the time, but the Watford Observer are making it pretty clear that this site ticks off most of the credentials that Watford are looking at for a proposal, but there are other sites being considered. Initially, guys, what was your reaction to the news being released?
I'm not happy. Vicarage Road is our spiritual home, and I look at Arsenal moving away from Highbury, I look at Tottenham moving away from White Hart Lane, and the most obvious one is West Ham moving away from Upton Park. And even if we're going European-wise, Atletico Madrid don't really seem to have the same atmosphere that they had since moving to the Metropolitano. I kind of don't see the point, considering for a start we don't sell out, and secondly, the Potsos, they built Vicarage Road up with the Elton John stand, giving more room for the 1881 movement, making improvements to the ground in general, and I just don't really see why they'd want to throw that away. I don't personally see the need to expand yet without having European football, but if we are going to, then keep it on site rather than moving away. I can understand why there'd be difficulties, considering we're right next to a big hospital. Some people around the area might not be happy with the large amount of building work. So I remember they were unhappy when the Elton John stand was being rebuilt.
Well, it's suggested in the piece in the Watford Observer, Robin, that of course Vicarage Road is it is one of the smallest stadiums in the Premier League, and the club do face challenges to grow and upgrade the existing stadium. It also suggested that all the proposals so far for a new stadium would be carbon neutral and would include a similar Kop-style stand to the one at the White Hart Lane at Spurs' stadium.
I can see both sides of it. I'm a bit 50-50. I think I'm more upset location-wise in terms of where they've proposed to put it in Bushey, whereas I feel like there's some sites more on the sort of Woodside, north side of Watford, where it's more near the M25, M1 junction, where there could be land there that could be used to build that stadium that they're on about. But I feel like, with all the work that's gone into Vicarage Road, it would be a shame now. It's approaching its 100th anniversary as being our stadium, because it was in 1922 we moved there. I think it'd be great to have it almost expanded. I think there is room for expansion on that Sir Elton John stand. It's all about getting permission from the residents. One suggestion I saw, which was nice, which was if they're looking to build on that Bushey Golf Club area, you could either build houses there or you could build a new hospital there and then sort of expand Vicarage Road almost into the old hospital site and turn the old hospital into like flats or into housing or something like that. I'd love to see European football at the Vic, actually. Like, unless it's really like we're selling out every game and there's a real demand for it, I think it could be a bit of a soul killer for the atmosphere at Vicarage Road.
I mean, we've seen with the club in terms of the new kit supply with Kelme, it's crucial for them to expand Watford's market in Asia, and they've tried to do that in North America. You can listen to that interview with Jay Demerit we did about his involvement with that as well. But I'm very much of the opinion, unless we get European football, as Sam said, unless our fan base grows dramatically, because if we're being completely honest, we don't sell out Vicarage Road anyway. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm certainly getting the impression that a move is definitely on the cards, and what's interesting in the Watford Observer piece is that Gino Pozzo is very keen to do that and wants to continue to invest in the club, which is a positive. Certainly, they're not looking to move, unless, if you want to flip it and be cynical, is this just a warning to the council to say we want to move or we want to expand at Vicarage Road? Or is it even that he's suggesting that to potential business owners who might want to buy the club, that actually you can buy Watford and also we've bought some land that you can build a new stadium on? You can look at it in several different ways. We don't know what Gino Pozzo is thinking, but if we're basing it on purely will Watford move from Vicarage Road to Bushey Hall Golf Club, I don't think it will happen anytime soon. But I think certainly I wouldn't like to see that until we get European football. Let us know your guys' thoughts on the potential stadium move to Bushey Hall Golf Club, and your thoughts on the Leicester game and the Burnley game. And do you think Roberto Pereira should start at Turf Moor on Thursday? Do let us know. Thank you very much for listening. You can listen to us on Spotify and SoundCloud, so make sure you do subscribe. Follow all of our socials, and we'll be back for a podcast after the Burnley game.